Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Meta Cafe. Grab your cup of coffee or your tea and let's have a chat about astrology, human design, the gene keys, whatever it is that we feel like talking about today. I'll tell you, I have had to exercise, not exorcise. I've had to exercise a lot of patience this morning. And I am so grateful yesterday for Donna's sharing with us the MindShift On Demand techniques that she uses, because I really had to use them this morning. Good morning, Vanita. I woke up, got ready, started, doing my day like I normally do, and went to my computer, and I realized it had to have restarted in the middle of the night or something because the screen was not where I had left it. And I tried to get my computer started and it wouldn't open up. And that always, of course, causes me to have a freak out session. And I started to freak out and I went, whoa, 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 whoa. What did you just learn yesterday, right? All the techniques that are in the MindShift On Demand book give us the tools for us to change our mind in the moment that this stuff is happening to us. So instead of following through with my freak out about my computer, I just had to walk away, and I'm putting on my mascara, and in my mind, I'm changing my mind about what's happening, right? I'm going through the process she took us through yesterday, shifting what my thoughts are, and allowing that energy to move through me, and for me not to attach to the fear, which is what it comes right down to, that, oh no, how am I going to get this fixed? What am I going to do? I don't know enough about how to fix my computer, et cetera, et cetera. You know how that goes. And then I'm, lashing out at Mercury because Mercury's turning retrograde tomorrow. And of course, he's the source of all my problems. So it was a pretty funny experience this morning for me to go, whoa, wait a minute. Who is the one who's in control here? Really, is it just my mind running away with all kinds of stuff? Or is it going to be my mind being, harnessed and at my command doing what I want it to do? And so I shifted that. Now, it took me a while to get my computer to shift with me, but I kept doing that. Every time the computer kept showing me the black screen, I would just go, isn't that interesting? What did she say to us yesterday? Look up to the right and to the left, and isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? And then I kept just saying, isn't that amazing, as I would visualize this, computer coming back on. And that's the reason why my hair is not dried this morning and I'm barely awake, because I was putting so much focus and energy on allowing my mind to shift around what it meant to have my computer not working this morning. And guess what? I turned around. I had my husband's computer as I was searching for help from HP on how to get my computer to work. And I turn around and I look, and my computer's opening up. And I was like, are you kidding me? That's awesome. I didn't have to do anything else. And then once I got into my computer, everything was fine. So it was a pretty amazing experience this morning to be able to put to work the things that we learned yesterday about how to shift your mind, especially in the heat of the moment, because that's when it all goes to hell in a handbasket, right? Is in the heat of the moment, when we're upset about something, an interaction we're having with someone, about our computers not working, about, an argument perhaps that you're in the midst of with someone. And it's in that moment that you have the choice to change your mind. And, I say this all the time, and I don't know that I often really, not that I don't believe that it's possible, because I do. Otherwise, I wouldn't bring it here and share this kind of stuff with you. But what I find even more awesome is when you actually get to put it into practice and it works. Now, I was even prepared to go so far as to, what if the worst happens and my computer doesn't turn back on? And how is that going to play out in my mind, right? As I'm going to be, going, oh no, I'm going to lose data. Oh no, just all the stuff that can go through your mind. And I was prepared to just let it go. And maybe I would come on this morning and maybe I wouldn't come on here this morning. And either way you look at it, it would have been out of my control at that point in time. And luckily, as luck would have it, it was a deep lesson about what is going on up here in the midst of challenges that appear in my life. And I guarantee it's the same thing that goes on up here for those of you who have challenges in your life, and who doesn't have challenges in their lives, right? Every day, sometimes there's something that crops up that can be perceived by you as a challenge. So I'm really grateful to Donna yesterday for coming on to the show. If you all missed that yesterday morning, please, go find the recording and listen. She's a very wise woman, and even though she may have a PhD, she certainly spoke with us at the level from which we could all understand, and I absolutely adored that. That she was able to do that for us. So let's see, who do we have out here this morning? Good morning, Kathy. Some reason I'm just in tunnel vision this morning. I mean, literally in tunnel vision, or you are one-minded about something. Good morning, Vicky. Awesome story, she says. Thank you. It was not so awesome experiencing it, but it was the aha that came out of it. And then immediately I had to, by the way, every morning I do this show, I have to go into the platform I use, set up the show. And at that point, my mind was still a little boggled, and I didn't know what we'd be talking about this morning. I didn't even know if I was going to have time to sit and prepare anything for us to talk about. So I was like, okay, well, what can you do? And I said, well, I could go on air and I could just say, hey guys, what do you want to talk about this morning? And let you guys drive the show. I was prepared to do that too. And we may yet do that. I did have some things that came up, but it's amazing what can happen when you get your mind out of the way. And if you change the dialogue that's going on in your mind from all the things that are wrong and all the things that you don't see that you really want or what have you, to all the fear-based things, you can change that in a moment. And it takes a little bit of willpower on your part to do it, but we do have that will because the mind isn't running us. Most times that's what we allow to happen, the mind running us. But the soul within you is really in control of everything that's going on here. That's the part we seem to forget about. Good morning, Cindy. Good morning, Debbie. It's good to see you. Good morning, Suzanne. Linda. Good morning, Diana. Good morning, Colleen. And I said good morning to you too, Vanita. Anybody else? Let's see. Debbie says, how is the holiday season looking? The holiday season's actually not looking too bad, to be honest. We do have, going into the holiday season, Mercury in retrograde. He shifts back, pretty close to December 6th, and will be in the shadow of his retrograde period at that point in time. But I think for the most part, we're looking pretty good. Jupiter's in Sagittarius. It's a more optimistic setup. I don't think that December holds anything maniacal, anything for us to be crazy worried about. I am a little worried about today and tomorrow, and I don't even know that worried is the right word, but the outer world, sometimes reacts to these, when there's pileups of things going on, the outer world sometimes doesn't react with as much peace as I think we could react. And so the world outward may look a little crazy for today and tomorrow, but looking ahead at December, I didn't see anything that, shook me to my core like October has and like early November has and things like that. So for the most part, Debbie, I think it's, it maybe not totally smooth, but certainly not, like some years where we've had Mercury go retrograde in December and, creating havoc. So we shall see, but I'm guessing it's going to be a little less than crazy. Good morning, Jacqueline, and good morning, Michelle Gay. Good morning. It's Ellie. Good morning, Ellie. It's good to see everybody. So let's talk a little bit then. Let me just, rephrase for people who were here, who are just now checking in. I was talking this morning about the mind shift that I was able to take on this morning when I first tried to get my computer to work, and it wouldn't work this morning for God knows what reason. I have no idea. Likely it went through some kind of update, and the updates sometimes throw my computer into a tizzy, and then that throws me into a tizzy. And this morning I chose to make a change. And so I really think that getting that book, The Mind Shift On Demand by Donna Blevins, is probably the biggest thing you can do for yourself. And like she said, there are 12, I think she said there were 12 exercises. And if you just did one a day, right, learned one a day for 2 weeks, you would have it down. And I think that's a great idea. And if you happen to have Kindle Unlimited, which is a program where you pay like $10 a month and you get unlimited access to Kindle books, or books that people put up on unlimited, and you can download it for free. And that's how I did it. I went to Kindle Unlimited. There it was. So I downloaded it. So I have access to the book, and it's fabulous. So if you guys missed that conversation this morning, it was from our conversation yesterday, and the book was Mind Shift On Demand. And I think it was a really good, and she writes it in such easy language. I mean, there was nothing like, oh, I'm up here, you're down here kind of language. It was great. It's just real easy to understand. So you're welcome, Debbie. And Jacqueline Tyler says, I'm confused about what going retrograde means. And that's a really good question, because I think sometimes we expect that there's a mechanical thing that's going to happen. Like we're going to be able to look in the sky and we're going to be able to watch Mercury move backwards, or we're going to be able to watch Venus move backwards. And it's really not that way at all. But what happens is this: the Earth and all of the planets have a speed through which that they are moving through their orbit. The inner planets from Earth inward, so Mercury and Venus, have a period of time because their orbit is faster than Earth's. So at times they pass the Earth in her rotation around the sun. When that happens, we experience a retrograde. We see that from our position here, that this planet is moving the other direction. But we're not really seeing it, visualizing it. If you were to go out every night and look at the sky, and if you could see every night what Venus is doing or what Mercury is doing during its retrograde, it would be moving a different direction through the sky than what it had been the night before. And that's really just a trick of our orbit. So literally, it isn't going backwards. It's not like it decided to go the other direction. We've just passed it up, or it's passed us up, rather. The outer planets spend longer time in retrograde because they're slower, and they have a longer period of time that it takes them to go completely around the sun. And so we experience a longer period of retrograde with them relative to our own orbit around the sun. And so literally, without having to get into the mathematics and the craziness of what is happening, it's better just for us to understand that at times when a planet turns retrograde, the effect of us here on the planet Earth, I wonder if this would happen to us if we were on Mars. It would be in a different way, but certainly it would happen. Earth would go retrograde. That would be interesting. So from our perspective, it just appears as if things slow down and turn to more toward an internal process than an external process. And it can mean then, if you imagine when you breathe in, and think about it like this: when you're walking or you're running and you start to have that faster breathing, right? It takes more energy for you to hold your breath because you want to just keep exhaling, inhaling, exhaling, inhaling. That's sort of what happens at the time a planet changes from one direction to the other, is that change creates this stress within us, and the stress it's like waves of energy that suddenly change direction. And so it creates a sort of a backlash within us. And because as above, so below, we feel that backlash energetically here on the planet or within our own beings. And we can chart that by looking at your astrology chart and seeing, okay, where are these things likely going to slow down? So Mercury is turning retrograde. Let's see, where is Mercury today? At 13 degrees of Sagittarius. So I would imagine by tomorrow it's going to be at between 14, 15 degrees. Let's see, where does it? I don't have the degree there. No, that's the 15th. 16th. Yeah, it doesn't give me the degrees on the sheet that I have, but looking at the chart, I can tell you it's probably about 14 degrees of Sagittarius, and it's going to turn backwards. And it's going to move backward through Sagittarius, counting down from 14 to 13 to 12, blah, 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 all the way backward into Scorpio. So wherever that Scorpio Sagittarius boundary is in your chart is where you're likely going to feel a bit of that backwash, a bit of the slowing down as it shifts from the external expression to the internal expression. I hope I didn't just confuse you more, Jacqueline. You can just type in and let me know if that confuses you more or if you get that. It just changes the dynamic of how you experience the energy of that planet. So for example, and this is just an example, this is the chart of today. It really doesn't have, this isn't a person's chart. This is me at 7 something this morning, 7:25 this morning, drawing this chart. So it's a snapshot of that period of time. And Mercury is up here, right here. Here's Mercury. And so that puts Mercury turning retrograde likely in the 11th house. So if this was a person's chart, the planet Mercury would be having you redefine maybe what your goals are, what your aspirations are. What is the dream? You'd probably have to slow down putting action on the dream in order to reevaluate, is this what I really want? Is this really the direction I want to go? If it is, great. When the planet changes back to forward motion, you'll be in a good place to be able to take new steps. If not, then you will have revised the plan, right? You'll have revised your plan. You'll have new steps to take once Mercury turns back to forward motion. The other place that this would mean in your life would be in the groups of people that you hang out with, your friends. It's, that kind of thing. So this is general, by the way. This is not anybody's personal chart, but in general, this would be sort of the idea of what's going on from a universal standpoint is we're reevaluating our desires, our wants, our goals, and also possibly even realigning who it is that we hang out with. Right? Who are we associating ourselves with? But personally, you also have this going on somewhere in your personal chart. Maybe if we have a chance today, we'll take a look at a couple of charts. But I think, we might have looked at those last week, but maybe if you didn't get a reading last week, maybe we'll take a look at a couple of charts. So what else is happening today? We have another short void of course moon, one that I'm just barely glossing over here because it's this evening from 7:59 p.m. West Coast time to 8:42 p.m. So what's that? 41, 42, 43 minutes. So it's barely a blip on the screen, and it's happening in the evening. So there's not much going on. It's not like it interrupts our work day. It might interrupt your sleep a bit if you're on the East Coast, because that's 10:59 to 11:42. If there's a bit of restlessness for you tonight, it would be because the moon would be at the last degree of Aquarius as it's ready to shift over into Pisces. The dream state comes, but there may be a little bit of restlessness tonight before you go to bed, or as you go to sleep. Maybe you're a little bit restless, or maybe you have a little bit of sleeplessness, but by a little bit after, by 11:45 or so, you're going to be out of that and hopefully be able to go to sleep. Then the moon enters the sign of Pisces, and things change dramatically in terms of how we interact emotionally. We become more empathic and compassionate, I believe, when the moon moves into Pisces. And that is for everybody. Everybody's changing from that more frenetic energy of Aquarius right now into the more softer, in some ways, sweeter energies of Pisces. Good morning, Veva. She says, I just missed what she said. Dang it. It says, tons of dreams. Something strange is happening in the stars for me. Yeah, I don't remember your chart, Veva, but I'm not surprised. There's strange things going on for everybody. But I have some really good news about what is changing too in terms of the moon and Mars. Remember in the weekly astrology report, I told you that Mars today's Thursday. Oh my gosh. Mars is moving into Pisces today. But not until 2:21 p.m. this afternoon, my time. So it's at 5:21 East Coast time. Up until then, Mars is in a very interesting dance with the planet Uranus. It's actually, they've been sort of moving toward one another. and forming a sextile, which is a positive, a beneficial sort of relationship that Mars and Uranus would have with one another. Mars wanting to take action and move forward, and Uranus saying, do it, right? Do it differently, do unexpected things, be impulsive. So I feel like we are really ready to move forward, right? We feel it inside of us. And, I've been experiencing sort of the what do you call that? Not goosebumps, because goosebumps are on the outside, but butterflies in my stomach. That's it. And I keep feeling that, and like excitement building about something, someplace that something's going to happen, and not bad thing happen, but something good going to happen, and I'm waiting for that to happen, and then that culminates today. And then we end up with Mars then this afternoon moving out of that last degree of Aquarius and into the sign of Pisces. And suddenly it slows us down. And now, if I had been impatient, restless, and impulsive and just took some kind of crazy action this early part of the day while Mars was, in this relationship with Uranus, egging me on to take change or do something, I may regret it. So I'm telling you today that you may be feeling that anxiety, that restlessness, that impatience that wants to take action on something. But remember two things. One, Mars is going to move right into Pisces here this afternoon, and it's going to slow everything down. It's going to slow your roll. And Mercury turns retrograde tomorrow. And if you've taken the wrong step forward, you're probably going to pay the price for it. So, here's where your human design comes in so handy, right? Because right now I'm looking at this energy and I'm like, oh gosh, this is, people wanting to take action. And sometimes just to clear the air and to be able to feel like you've done something, you'll take action, but it turns out being the wrong action. And you find that out like tomorrow and the next day when it all blows up, or you realize, oh, I've spent money that I needed on something else. So your human design helps you make the decisions that are correct for you. By using your type and your strategy and your authority, you can make sure that decisions are being made in alignment with what's correct for you, right? We talk about that a lot as well. And if you don't know what your type and your strategy and your authority is, you need to get your human design chart. And you can do that by going to my website and get living-astrology.com. and get your chart. If you want to, you can get a reading. By the way, when you request a chart, you receive a link to the webinar that I did, I think it was in August, on the 3 keys to unlocking your human design, which is, by the way, your type, strategy, and authority. How awesome is that, right? So if you get your chart, you get access to that. It was a free webinar that I did. And for those of you who don't remember that that's a possibility, I can certainly send that out again, and you guys can have access to it as well. And of course, you have to have your human design chart to be able to see what your type and strategy and authority is. So that saves us on a day like today, where we really feel that energy of restlessness and wanting to take action and just to make some moves. And then that energy shifting right away. Well, maybe not right away. For me, that would be another 6 hours from now. That energy shifting. And now I'm, in the slow down mode and feeling like I might have made the wrong decision. So I'm going to use my type and strategy. I'm a generator. I only respond to what is showing up in my outer world. And I'm not making any decisions today based on what shows up in my outer world, because I'm emotionally defined. I have to wait to make sure I have a clarity around what is right for me, what feels good to me. For those of you who might have splenic or sacral authority, you in the moment, if you're a generator or manifesting generator, in the moment you have something to respond to, is this right? Is this right? Projectors, it might be a little more complicated for you because you're waiting for invitations. But let's say somebody does hand out an invitation to you today to do something. You still have authority somewhere in your chart. Or if you have no authority, then you don't make a decision in the moment. You start talking to people around you to get a feel for or a reflection of what is correct for you. I hope some of that makes sense. Good morning, Tina. Do you think Jupiter going into Sagittarius influenced the California fires? I think so. I think so. And, it's weird because Sagittarius is a fire sign, but it speaks to the excesses. Oh, God help me. The excesses of our building in areas of California that are fire prone, right? People buy these big houses or they build these big houses in parts I grew up in California. Every year we experience those Santa Ana winds. It's not like that's new. Right? It's not new. And they, the Santa Ana winds, they blow hot and they blow the desert air out in toward the ocean, and that air speeds up as it heads towards the ocean. So we get high winds and we get heat coming at us from the desert out there. And it is one of those pieces that's, involved in the fire season. So we have fire season. We know we have these winds, particularly in the fall. And then we end up with people building their homes in places that are fire prone, right? So there's no natural fire breaks anymore. And as sad as it is to see people's homes burning to the ground, one of the things I have to remind myself of is nature has always done this, right? There have always been fires, wildfires in the West. The trees depend on fire in the West for their propagation. A lot of the trees do, right? They require fire to burn them to open up the seed pods and allow new growth. That's it's a strategy, born of evolution. So when we've, encroached into territories that are fire prone, it's, like just waiting to happen. And as sad as that is, it's a part of Jupiter and Sagittarius and the excesses, right? The excesses, the overgrowth, the overexpansion, the tendency of that kind of behavior. And I know that's no comfort to someone who's losing their home and, losing their possessions and what have you, but it is kind of the lesson that we're all here to learn about sustainable growth, right? Building sustainability. Is it appropriate to be, stripping hillsides that are already prone to fire and then building these homes on them? Developers are part of the problem here, right? They grab up the land and they see dollar signs. They don't see the terror of a family losing their home because they built a subdivision in a gully, right? Or a valley that is hard to get into or out of, right? We put up in the Paradise fire up in California. It's a possibility that my parents lived in Paradise, so I've spent a lot of time down there from my position here, and it was rolling hills and a lot of wilderness, and you encroach upon that wilderness, and again, it's one of those setups. We're going to at some point have an issue. The possibility exists for an issue. It's like when you build along the west coast of the United States, there's the possibility for earthquakes. When you build along the Gulf Coast of Florida and Alabama, Mississippi, there's the possibility of hurricanes. So we know that the possibility exists. And the best thing we can do then is moderate what we're doing in terms of building and make sure that what we do build can withstand. We need the infrastructure. Debbie, you said that the other day, something about infrastructure. And we need if you're going to build in territories that are prone to disaster and destruction, you need the infrastructure to be able to support that. And that means that perhaps past times of Jupiter and Sagittarius where we overgrew, now we're seeing the course correction of that. That's a long answer to a quick question, I'm sure, more than you wanted to hear, but it is kind of the influence there. Let me go back to Jacqueline for a minute. She said, thanks, that helps. I'm curious to talk to you later about what my moon sign is. The moon sign, yeah, that's always fun, isn't it? Jacqueline says, stillness. Cindy, I don't remember that. Can I get that link from you too, please? I think what I'll do, guys, is I'll post it here on the page. I believe it's in Dropbox, so I'll have to go searching for it, but maybe I'll just copy the link out of the, I'll do it. I'll post it here for you all. Colleen, I heard another astrologer say the same thing. Jupiter and Sag in our emotional state as a nation combust. Ooh, there is that too. There is that too. And I'm going to say this because I think I can get away with this without you guys thinking I'm absolutely, absurdly insane, is I honestly am not necessarily given to conspiracy theories, but there seems to be some evidence that there's monkeying around going on with weather and with weapons. We're weaponizing sound. We're weaponizing the weather. I know it's happening. It's like visceral. I feel like that is happening. And, when we play God with weather, with, the elements, we're going to get burned. Now, I don't know that that's what's happened here. And before everybody starts screaming at me about it, I pretty much guarantee you something is going on. I don't know exactly what it is, right? Remember HARP? HARP was a huge facility up in Alaska that was presumably doing one thing that seemed very benign, but most people were very positive that something else was going on, and it was about weather manipulation. And there's also theories about weaponizing earthquakes, right? Being able to project sound waves through the earth and into the deep fault zones of the planet and creating earthquakes. And, I don't think it's science fiction so much anymore as it's probably approaching science fact, and we don't know if that's going on or not. What if someone can send a signal through the electric lines and create a spark in a dry climate that creates a fire? And right? I just don't doubt it anymore. At some point, I think that would have been just relegated to the science fiction. Now it's pretty much something that I would be unsurprised to find out was truth. Debbie says CERN and HARP. CERN is another one. If CERN is a Halon collider, I believe it is, where they are speeding up particles and shooting them through in order to get to the minute particles of an atom. And there's probably way more to that than what we know. So Debbie, yep. Colleen says, hasn't China admitted they can control weather and did so whenever they hosted the Olympics? That I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised. And I don't know if any of you have, Vanita, she says, she put it very succinctly, talk about a hard to control weapon. Absolutely. But some of you may remember back in the 80s or 90s, I guess it was, there was a book written called Chaos Theory. And I think the last name of the author was Glick. Can't remember what his first name was, but I had to read that book when I was in college. And chaos theory goes something like this. A butterfly flapping its wings in Japan has an effect on the weather here on the west coast of the United States, kind of thing. That sometimes the smallest things that we do can translate into big, unexpected effects in other places around the globe. So if here we are intentionally, doing things that set fires, I can't even imagine someone really a villain bad enough to do that. But, we have a president that acts like a 2-year-old at times. So it's not surprising that maybe there are, bigger powers than he that can create chaos and do create chaos. Who would have ever thought that the possibility existed that Russia could interfere in our elections? Right. So it's almost that we, there's so much that that's being hidden from us, people playing and manipulating things that they have no business playing with or manipulating. And guess what? What goes around comes around. You can't do it's a law of the universe that cause and effect, that whatever it is that we do has consequences. And we have to be able to accept responsibility for those consequences. But who's paying for those consequences of the things that people are doing that we don't see or hear about or know or can control? And yeah, it has this ripple effect. Colleen says, yeah, I had to read it in college too. It's pretty fascinating, highly mathematical, but the bottom line was so true. The little things that you do have huge reverberations, and you don't even know what kind of chain of events that you may have started just by something small that you do, right? I know the Navy had been experimenting with sound sonar waves in the ocean, and look at whales and dolphins were dying. Their young were dying, and they thought it was innocuous, that there were not going to be any effects. But that's stupidity. That is total blind stupidity to believe that you focusing sound waves through the ocean isn't going to have an effect on the animals in the ocean that rely on sonar and sound waves to move through and migrate. That's ridiculous, right? Short-sighted. I mean, even a non-scientist would wonder, why is it that they're doing that when these animals need that in order to be able to migrate and move through their environment? It's sad when you think about it, but it's scary as well, because we don't know who's manipulating what. Maybe that hurricane that bloomed out of nowhere and slammed into Panama City was guided. There were videos on YouTube. Debbie showed me one. I found others where, scientists, scientific types had evidence that was the possibility. It was steered. It was steered right into. So I don't know what's true and what's not about that. All I can say is that one of the things that we should be careful for, and the only thing that we can really control, is our ability to be sustainable. If you're buying a house in the Hollywood Hills and you know that there's only one way in and one way out, you better have a plan on how to evacuate in the case of a fire, because fires are inevitable in California. Those hills of California always burn. They always have. They always have. When I was a kid, there were fires. I lived in Long Beach, or Lakewood in California, so I was never worried about fire where I was. But every year we heard about this, right? And I know people think they're worse than they used to be, and possibly they are, but what's worse isn't that the fires are worse. It's that there are more of them, possibly because of the heat factor and less rain, but also because people have intruded into those areas that were fire prone in the first place. So, of course, we hear about it in loss of life and loss of property. So, it's a problem, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon. So I think Jupiter and Sagittarius, to your point, Tina, has us really looking at, where are we overexpanded in our own world, in our own selves, right? Where have we done that personally? Right. So that's really all I can control. I can't control what everybody else is doing. But it certainly helps to have a conversation like this. It brings it up out of the dark, instead of relegating it to conspiracy theory, being able to face it and say, I think that it's a potential, it's a possibility that there's some kind of manipulation going on. And if there's some kind of manipulation going on, it is only going to be a matter of time before we find you out. Right? Before we find out who it is that is perpetrating that upon us, and we take steps to do something about it, instead of just running around like dogs chasing our tails, right? Colleen says, Trump supporters claim the hurricane was to reduce illegal immigrants. So was Hurricane Sandy making landfall in Atlantic City to stop Trump from being president. Now, some of those things get to cross into conspiracy theory, I think. Although, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised, right? I wouldn't be surprised. But I do know that science has taken us to a precipice. There is so much that we understand about science, and so many things that we can do, but just because we can do them doesn't mean we should do them. And when is it that we end up with an Atlantis type of situation on our hands, right? Where, theory is that Atlantis grew too far, too fast, too much technology, and they crossed over the precipice and they couldn't leash it back in, right? They couldn't releash it. And so what? It sank. into the ocean. And I mean, how close are we to something like that right now? Right. Interesting. Remember a few weeks back, I was talking about Jupiter in Sagittarius, and we were looking ahead at some of the things that had occurred the last time that Jupiter was in Sagittarius. The very first thing I shared with you was like the first month of that Jupiter was in Sagittarius. North Korea came up front and center, and they had decided they were going to dial back their nuclear program. And yesterday, or was it the day before, a news broadcast came on about these secret places that North Korea has where they are developing nuclear weapons. I was like, oh my gosh, here we go again, right? We've got a Jupiter in Sagittarius and some of those kinds of secret things. Like, what did they do last time? They probably took their program secret, right? They said, oh, well, we're going to dial it back. But instead, they took it underground. And they made up these, secret places where they could work on it without the US interfering or other countries interfering. And now it comes to light, now that Jupiter's back in Sagittarius, it comes to light that they have these secret places where they've been developing weapons that might even be able to reach the US. Great. We need that. We need a crazy person with nuclear weapons pointed at us, right? So things come to light during this time period as well. Things that were hidden in the dark come to the light. And not to scare us, we there's plenty in the world to be afraid of. But for our ability to say enough is enough, right? Do we want to go the way of Atlantis? Or are we going to do something about it now that makes it effective to change our course, to change the course of action? It's not lost on me that we are in the early days of the United States. I think it was Andrew Jackson drafted something called the Manifest Destiny. Maybe it was Jefferson. And Manifest Destiny was about the westward expansion of the United States, right? Not just being, that's why Lewis and Clark headed west. And it was about the fact that our destiny was to expand and grow and, basically become masters of the universe, taking over the planet, becoming a superpower. That was written way back in time. Well, we've come to a point on this planet where we cannot expand any further. I mean, the last frontier literally is Antarctica and the Arctic, which of course we're blasting our way around there as well right now. And the next thing you begin to hear about is this mission to Mars, right? We've, created a toilet of the Earth. So now we're going to go to Mars. And we're going to send people to Mars because what we've dumped on our planet now, and we're getting close to a point of no return where we can't turn back. And so we're going to go to Mars. So we're not going to make solutions for this planet. We're going to spend all of our money to go to a planet where we would have to terraform in order to there's no oxygen there. How are you going to breathe? Right. So it's amazing to me how gross it is for us to think about a mission to Mars. Not that I'm saying we shouldn't have that, for exploration purposes, but I guarantee you people aren't looking at just for exploration. They're looking at, if the worst happens and we blow up our planet Earth, we'll have another place to go that we can conquer, that we can kill off. Instead of enacting the things here on this planet that would work to save the planet, right? Save the species. So what we're up against right now is really interesting because we've got Jupiter in Sagittarius that likes to talk about growth and moving outward, but then Pluto and Saturn both in Capricorn, a sign that is about constriction, about focusing energy, about boundaries and limits. So I think right now, we might be able to see how we could create sustainable growth. That's the highest potential here. We could see that we can create sustainable growth, that we have, infrastructure that we could be working on that could shore everybody up, put everybody to work, even the immigrants that come here. There's plenty of work here. If we choose to do that, instead of focusing on all of these pie in the sky things or weapons of mass destruction and et cetera, et cetera. So the astrology of our times really shows us that we have that capability for creating sustainability in the environment and our growth and everything that we do. And I think a lot of that also rests on women coming into power, right? Because things have been out of balance. That masculine principle has been way over strong, while the feminine principle has been way under strong. So, shoring that energy up, that feminine energy up, really goes a long way. We saw it happen in this country with the political shift, but we can see it all around the globe as well. And I think sometimes other countries are far and away ahead of us in understanding the implications of what it is this global warming means for us. And it's not just the United States. It's all around the world. So, wow, that wasn't where I expected to go this morning, but it's still a good conversation to have. Isn't it interesting that it's happening? We're having this discussion today while the moon and the sun have come into their crisis of action point. It's let's see, Holly just says, how ironic this is what you're talking about. We were talking about this last night. How can we make a change on our earth and fight the greed that is killing our planet? Well, the only way we can fight it is it begins with you, right? It begins with you changing your mind about what you're seeing, taking action wherever you can take action, in whatever way you can take action. If that means the conversation that you're sharing with people that get people thinking, if it is your vote, if it is your dollars, and where you spend them, if it is a conversation you have with the people in power in your state or in your country, whatever it is, every little bit helps. Every little bit helps. And we can see that in the past, it has been the grassroots movement that has really propelled things forward. And that was one of the things that's interesting that's coming up today as Uranus is sitting back at the 29th degree of Aries. Because while Uranus was in Aries from 2011 until just this last May, when it moved forward into Taurus, but now it's backwards again, right into late degrees of Aries. One of the things we saw so powerfully was when people rose up. Right? Women rose up and marched on Washington. In the Arab nations, the people revolted against their government, their corruption that was in their governments. And, leaders were toppling one after the other during that period of time. And Uranus is back into that same territory. And here that subject comes up again. How do we move forward? Well, I think if there's anything we've learned is that when people come together with a common cause, in a positive way, we have an impact. We have an impact. And I can tell you that one of the next big things that's happening with Jupiter and Sagittarius is about transparency, ethics. And I already hear that being bandied around, in political realms. But, transparency and ethics and morality, and I don't mean the kind of religious morality, but, your moral center, your integrity, that's also up in a big way, because that's one of the things that Jupiter in Sagittarius rules, is that kind of walking your talk and talking your walk, and, exposing what is hidden and then being able to take steps, toward changing that. But it's time. We also need time, right? This doesn't happen overnight, although some things do happen overnight. I'm going to tell you right now in the Astrology for 2019 webinar, we're going to look month by month at what's, possible. But I'm just going to tell you all now ahead of time, look to May as a financial, between March and May, but mostly I'm thinking May, as a financial, I don't want to say a financial hit, but at a month where having grown too far too fast is not going to be beneficial to you at all. So if we look at that from our perspective here at the end of 2018, it would be that perhaps you keep your money close, right? That you don't spend You don't become overly optimistic about finances and overspend. We might need to create some, if you have a safe or something, put some money, some cash away. Stock up on things like water and toilet paper, the things you would need in case of a disaster or a financial hit. And I don't say that to scare you, but I say that because if you're prepared, it's less scary when it happens, right? So some things are out of our control. We did not do a very good job at the last economic meltdown of fixing what was wrong. We put Band-Aids on everything and hoped it would hold. And that was 12 years ago. And that's a Jupiter cycle ago. So if we're going to engage in growing too far too fast, without any checks and balances, right? I know that a lot of people in our country, they value small government. But I guarantee you that we are not, as people, ready for small government yet. Why? Because greed is still the powerful energy on the planet. And when people don't have rules and regulations to go by, they get greedy and they start pushing the river, right? They start pushing into territory that's unbound. We are not at the consciousness level yet that can support that, although I know that's where we're going. At some point, we will be able to reduce government. We will be able to reduce the interference of government in the states or in our lives, but we're not there yet because big money is still in play. And big money flaunts the rules, right? Flaunts the rules. You go into a courtroom as a person that has to have a public defender versus someone who is a corporation and has access to high-powered attorneys. Who wins? Right? Because it's about the greed. Who can you pay off? So we still need those regulations on banks and on corporations to be able to make sure they can't use their money in a way that creates havoc on the planet. Because they're not that conscious yet, but we're getting there. Some corporations have already, crossed into that kind of responsibility. And so that gives me heart because that means that if one can, all can. But until then, we shouldn't be relaxing financial restrictions and things like that because it doesn't create the kind of growth that's sustainable. It creates runaway growth, which then rebounds backwards and creates a balancing of the accounts in, what the potential is a runaway depression. Just some things that, are the potential out there. And the only way that we can really make sure that does not happen in that way is to be sane, be in your body, be sustainable. That is the entire lesson of Saturn and Capricorn and Pluto in Capricorn is it's exposing the places where we aren't sustainable. It's not sustainable for corporations to have all this power. And yet here in America with Citizens United, what the heck was that rule that corporations were people? They counted as people and they had vote and they could invest money into the elections. Look at what that's created. That was not a good thing, right? That gave power to corporations that they should never have been able to have. And until that's corrected, we won't be able to have finance reform or political finance reform, right? So there's, these snowball things that we've got to take care of. We got to start at the very base, right? The foundation. I actually drew a card for us this morning, and it was a really good card. Two of them actually jumped out, and one was building blocks. This was the first one, card number 28, that says building blocks. We've had this one before, I believe. And building blocks, card number 28 says, as you might imagine, build a foundation, right? The essential meaning is strong foundations, a beautiful work in progress. And by the way, they came out straight up and down. So I'm reading the oracle's message and not the protection message. It says you have everything you need to cultivate an extraordinary life. This is a time when your focus needs to be on the foundations you build upon. Your work, your relationships, and your very being are underwritten by your values, ethics, morals, and core beliefs. Are they still true for you? Will they stand the test of time and serve as the solid grounding upon which you construct your life? Now you are making changes that will affect everything in a positive way. Your destiny is truly a remarkable and beautiful design. The relationship message. When you see this card, know that you are attracting new relationships into your life and solidifying the ones you already have by building them on foundations of honesty, humility, clear communication, and a genuine desire to know one another. You are moving toward laying the groundwork for a relationship with a firm footing that will ensure it can withstand any storm. Long-standing, relationships are also repaired and strengthened. You and the other person are stronger, wiser, and more powerful together than apart. And the prosperity message reads, you have everything you need to turn iron into gold in the alchemical process of creating the prosperous life you desire. Now is the time to build on the strong foundation you have already laid for your prosperity. Keep in mind that these building blocks are imbued with the sparkling energy of your intentions. Own your dream and remember that you always have more than enough and you always are enough. So abundance is ever present. Your creativity is divinely inspired, and the design for your life is taking shape in service to the world. You are meant for success. I love that. And it's interesting because tomorrow, as Mars moves into Pisces, so late in the day today, and also starting tomorrow, the gene key 55 is where Mars is going to be sitting at. And the gene key, or the gate 55 in your human design, is all about abundance and how abundance is ours, right? It's just there. We just tap into the stream. And abundance isn't all about just money. It's about everything, right? That we are meant to be abundant. And if we stay in the flow of abundance, then we have an abundant life. And that's what this card is basically saying. And it's interesting because the other card I drew, actually, this one just dropped on the floor. So I went, oh, okay, this must want to come in too. And it was serendipity, card number 18, which is a 9. And I see Suzanne just posted angel number 1 because 28 is a 10 is a 1. So we have the alpha and the omega, right? The alpha being 28 or 1, and the omega now being 18 or 9. So let's see what serendipity is, which was card number 18. So the essential meaning of serendipity, as you might expect, is opportunity allied with readiness, the awareness of synchronicity, luck, and good fortune appearing as signs and symbols, a magical alignment of events. And the oracle's message is you've stepped into alignment with the greater good, where your dreams and the collective dream resonate in exquisite harmony. Now is the time for luck and preparation to meet and create miracles that you could never have planned all by yourself. Keep in mind that you are a channel for providence right now, as a higher energy uses you as a force on behalf of the whole world. That's exciting. Your fortune becomes everyone's fortune. Everything you bring into being now will leave a wondrous legacy for others in the future. Your service to the world is being supported at this time. Expect the unexpected and smile, for Spirit loves you so very much. And the prosperity message for that is you are in the right place at the right time. Be grateful, for the stars are aligned in your favor and fortune is smiling on you. Victory and success are yours. The choices you have made in the past have prepared you for this opportunity, or before the opportunities now before you. This is your lucky moment. The timing is perfect. I love this as an ending to some of the more dire things that we were talking about today, because it really does tell us that you as an individual have power, right? The power to create a positive experience in the world, to be prosperous, to have luck on your side. And actually, Jupiter in Sagittarius can bring luck and serendipity and good things. It's just a lesson also in making sure that it's sustainable, right? That it's not runaway growth, and that it's, not something that's going to be able to stand the test of time. So I think those are great messages for us to leave by. Suzanne also posted angel number 9. It's the number of universal love, eternity, faith, universal spiritual laws, karma. There's a whole list here of things. And the angel number 9 is a sign from the angels that your life path and soul mission involve being of service to humanity. We're all in service to humanity. So even though we've crossed some territory today that might have been scary, Colleen writes, I'm always ready for the zombie apocalypse. I love it. Debbie says, great show. Thank you. Holly, how ironic that I already read that. So, I think it's a good way to leave today, right? To be able to see that there is so much potential for good. And it's our job to demand that of ourselves and of the people around us, right? And we can't demand it of others if we're not prepared to have it for ourselves or do it for ourselves, right? So transparency, ethics, integrity, boundaries, serendipity, joy, building blocks, foundations all begin with you. All of the words that we've bandied about today all begin with you. And exposing conspiracies, looking for the deeper truths, not as a way to be fearful and create more energy around them, but for us to see a path through them that doesn't include destruction of the planet or of each other. So, all right. I hope you all have a wonderful day. I will see you tomorrow morning. It'll be Friday, and we'll be able to talk about the energy for the weekend, which I love the weekend when it begins with the moon in Pisces. It just feels really good. So until tomorrow, mwah, I will post here for you the link to the recording for the 3 keys. And also remember, there is the opportunity for you to purchase your seat for the webinar for December 5th. I think I posted that already and pinned it to the top page, so it's easy to find. Set yourself up so you'll know what's coming for next year. All right, guys, take care. Bye for now.